Mike just pulled up with the load. Brought 2 Daytonas. How about that? That one's not mine though. We bought the orange one. We bought the orange Daytona RT. Let's see what we got. Oh, that one cranks. So this one was a front end hit. It's like some bumper damage and stuff. Don't look too bad first glance on the rollback. So as soon as it gets here, it's already got water all in the trunk. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a flood, but it could have flooded at the lot. More than likely it's not a flood, more than likely it just leaked somewhere and got inside of it. But you can see there's water all over it. This is the kind of stuff you deal with, the unknown. It's not a flood vehicle, it's a wreck, but there's no telling what the story behind it is. Also could just have a leaking trunk. You know, one of these holes for the spoiler could be leaking. So it cranked up. It took 2 jump boxes. It won't crank on one. The battery's in the trunk, so it was just a little dead. But cranked up, is running. Got a little bit of smoke from coming under the hood, if you can see it. We think it's just excess oil burned off. Sometimes a little bit of oil gets on it from people messing with the dipstick and stuff while it's been sitting up. But there's no ticking, no knocks. It has 172 on it, and it is Daytona number 2911 of 4,000 made. So it is the Mango edition. Orange one. I love these things. I hate Chargers and Challengers, but I love flipping these. I would never own one though, because they're heavy as a boat. Not unless you just want it for looks, I guess. But it's not really my thing with the Dodges. But I do like flipping them. I can get them for a pretty good deal, and they do bring pretty decent money on selling them. A lot of people are into these old tugboats. So yeah, so we're gonna pull it around. The battery's extremely dead, so we're gonna go ahead and get this thing on the smart charger for the whole weekend. Let it really set up and charge up and hopefully come back to life. That way it'll be ready to take the bumper off on Monday and then test drive it and see what we got. But feels like it's running really good, so I'm not worried about it running. You know, we just have to check to see if it has suspension damage or anything, but I think we're gonna be solid on this one. I'm actually probably gonna put it in the paint booth, let it charge over the weekend just for room, because we are really out of room and we got to get Randy's car out of here this weekend. But let it sit here and run for a minute and clean up some mess and get it on the charger. Alright, so good morning, welcome back. We decided to put this on the frame rack because I started peeking down below and seeing this right here, which we've opened it up a lot more now where you can see it better. But when I look down here like this, you can see how this rail's like this. These rails are supposed to be straight. So when it hit the front, even though it didn't shatter the bumper somehow, like literally that's all it did, it actually knocked the whole front end is over that way. So when I first pulled this in, I was pretty sure what we had was, hey, we needed a front bumper, a headlight, a turn signal, and fix the hood. That was it. It has now turned into definitely need a bumper, need 2 headlights, 2 turn signals. Both fenders are rolled, which basically, if you look at this right here, okay, this flange right here is rolled in like that. It's supposed to be standing up at a 90. So that flange is rolled in towards the motor. And then if you look at this side, that flange is rolled out like that. So that one's rolled like this one's rolled like that. And the hood, of course, took a hit there, and the whole hood is shifted over at the hinges. So what it was is when it took a hit like this, the hood was inside of the square, because of course your hood sits down inside of your fenders. Okay, it doesn't sit up above the fenders. So when it took the hit, the fender basically flexed over, hit the edge of the hood, and then that pushed the hood that way, which hit that fender, which blew all that fender over. Also, it must have took most of the blow right here to the rail, even though the bumper is not cracked. This is the part of this business that can be extremely deceiving and you can get yourself in trouble fast, because this is up high, which, I mean, it clearly took a hit up high to the hood, but your frame rail's down low, okay? So your frame rail's down here somewhere, but somehow this thing took a hit hard enough to not damage the bumper down here, but still shift them whole rails over. Seth's pulled the bumper back, and as we start peeling the bumper back, you can see that the radiator support is cracked and knocked over, which can also be called your header panel in some situations. So this piece right here should be standing up at a 90, and I thought we were good on radiator and all that, but you can see right there that the radiator is also busted at the where the line comes into it. So it's definitely not a good morning. This is definitely not how I wanted to start my Monday off, is with frame damage. I already have another one that I know has frame damage, but it is what it is. So he's working on getting the bumper off now. Once he gets the bumper off, then we will continue to look at the damage, but it's looking like this one might be hard enough of a hit to actually have to get put on the clamps. And, you know, basically, normally when we do minor pulls, cosmetic, like a lot of stuff that we do, we actually use heavy duty ratchet straps. I don't know if you've seen the other videos. I strap them down with actually something like that, because normally I'm not doing that bigger pulls. Normally I don't have to pull out the big clamps, but it looks like this one, we're gonna take the rockers off probably and get it down here on its pinch weld that's underneath here, and put this thing actually up on clamps and walk this front end back over. So we're gonna make sure we show y'all every step of this one, because this got ugly fast this morning. And yeah, join y'all along for the ride and see if I can either make some money or if y'all gonna watch me lose a bunch of money. All right, so we got the first side on clamps. That's working on getting the other side apart. You got to take your rockers off. It's a pain in the butt, man. I don't think I've seen these clamps in, I know, 6 months. We might be close to a year that I haven't seen these clamps. I've got lucky and not had to have one that needs to go on clamps. Yeah, so here's our buckle on this side. This is where the frame rail swung over this way. And then it also looks like our tie rod, now that I look closer, it looks like our tie rod might be bent also. See how that's curved up? And then you can actually see, it looks like something's going on here. I just don't feel like you're supposed to be able to see that. So it's almost like this is about to pop out. That could be forklift damage. When they lift these at the auction, they basically come underneath them from the back side of the forks, and then they pick the fork up. And a lot of times they can bend arms and all that kind of crap. But gonna unloosen our engine cradle, because it is got 4 bolts, so it is a form of a brace for your front frame rails. So we're going to just crack them loose so it has some pivots, and I'm hoping that when we get the other side on clamps that we hook to this, I'm hoping that we can walk this rail right over and it doesn't put up a fight. So yeah, I'll put this clamp a little bit more up this way because there's actually a bunch of plastic right here. But if the car wants to, and I'm actually going to put some straps in the back just for extra, but if the car wants to start turning like this as they're pulling, because the rail has to go that way up front, front has to go that way, it means the back's going to want to come this way. If it starts to want to do that, then we might have to move that clamp back to this track. But I'm hoping that I can put 2 straps diagonally going like that from the bottom side of the rear subframe, and I'm hoping that keeps the car from walking over and locks it down hard enough. So this is definitely not what I want to do. This is definitely anything. If I would have known that it had damage like this, I would have never bought this. I don't normally care to buy these like this, even though I do have a frame machine. I do. It's basically for lighter pulls. I don't really like to do heavy pulls, but I bought it and it is what it is. I didn't know it was going to be like this. So that's the name of the game. I don't go check mine over in person no more. After COVID, when they stopped letting you go check them out in person, I had already made the transition to not going in person because I'm actually so busy all the time. So I don't even ever go look at them in person. But yeah, you can see what we're working with, kind of how much that rail is curved. So this center right here should technically probably be about right here. So it's right here, and it should be about right here. So we probably got about 2-3 inches over, if not 4, that we're gonna have to pull out. But get that side on clamps, and then we're gonna hook some chains. So as you're setting these down on these clamps, they have to actually go in your pinch weld, which is the same place that you jack the vehicle up from. So they sit in there like that. You get one set, and then you stop your jack. And then sometimes you have to rock your other side. Just take a little pressure off that. Make sure that one's in. Make sure they're both in. Then you can go ahead and set the car all the way down. Alright, so this crash bar is back into this washer reservoir. You need to get the washer reservoir out of here. So we're just going to simply throw a hook in here and just try to pull this crash bar out a little, just to relieve some pressure off of this bottle. That's all we're doing. We're not actually pulling the frame right now. You don't want to rip that off of the front end, because I could literally rip that off of the frame horn if I wanted to. But you don't want to do that because we need that on there to tie the 2 rails together. So hopefully we can walk them together whenever we get to that point. So now we're just going to get the washer bottle out. Mike, you want to come see what we got?
Yeah, man.
So there's my morning. You see on time lapse, everything broke down. We got everything taken apart. You can see everything a little bit better. Yeah, not fun stuff, but there it is. It's 10:27. Now I just have to find something to do to hide from everybody until 11 o'clock, so I don't have to do any more work. But there it is. It's all broke down. So we might go ahead and yank a chain before lunch, just so I can eat my lunch in peace and know if this rail's going to walk over. Alright, so what we've got set up is we're going to do a double tower pull. Basically 2 towers. We got 1 tower to this rail, and then we've got our second tower running over here to this rail. You don't want to just hook to this rail, which is what I did when I first started and didn't know what I was doing, which I still probably don't know what I'm doing, and I'm sure I'll get comments about I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 100% self-taught. I've never went to school for this, never been to a class for this. I've just had some old guys tell me and teach me a couple things, so I guarantee you I'm doing it wrong. But this is all I know. I do the best I can with what I have, and learn as I go. So it's not like this is a customer car. If I mess something up where it's too bad, I just send it back to auction and I don't sell it, so if I can't get it back right. And the frame pulls are normally a huge debate in the collision world. A lot of people are not going to like this. And then a lot of people will. So it's going to be 50-50 in the comments probably eventually. But we're going to hook this together. We're going to tighten this one up, and we're going to tighten this one up, and then we're going to sync them together so that they open the valves so that they both have the same amount of pressure on them, and then we're going to pull them together. So we're going to go ahead and get that one tight like that, and now we'll close this valve on this one. We'll open this one up. We'll get this tower tight. Actually, we'll drop it down because it wasn't all the way down. So let's drop it down, and now let's pull it tight. Oh, see if you can get another link out of it. That's all I was doing. All right, so now we'll take the slack out of that one. Get that where that catches. I'd rather be at a little better of an angle, but let me move this one up. Maybe we'll move this one up a touch, because I don't want to be pulling down on the chain. Or I don't want to be pulling down on the crash bar, Alright, so let's try that. Let's lower this back down so we can see if we can get another link hooked in it. Nope, that's all we got, so let's tighten that back up. I really don't like being at the angle, but I didn't want this chain putting too much pressure on this bar right here and pulling it, trying to pull it down. This is going to do a lot of the sideways walking. On this one's just going to kind of assist to make sure that rail follows. We did loosen the engine cradle bolts because that is a brace, and all it did was pivot on the engine cradle. The engine cradle does not appear to be bent at all. So your engine cradle bolts right here, and your bends right here. So basically this was a pivot point. It pivoted and kinked it behind the bolt. And then the same thing happened on this side. If you look, your bolt's here. Here's the outside of your bend, so it just pivoted. So what it should do is basically the rail should be in a banana shape like this, with my knuckles right here being the pivot point, and let's see here, like this. And so when we walk it back, it should basically hopefully straighten it back out. That's basically what should happen. So let's get this thing pulled. So both of them, the rams, are now both open, and they're both going to go up together at the same time. And we just got to watch and see if the front end comes over. Now, all I did was kind of just make a little pull just to kind of fill it out to see how much it sprung over and what was going on. I'm actually going to see, I'm letting the rams down now. So I'm actually going to reset everything. I'm going to retighten these chains up, and then I'm going to put another chain on the other side. So we definitely got some length out of that one. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this ram and put it around the pivot point that we don't want to move, because basically we don't want to pull all this front end over. So we're going to get a chain around this. That way this stays still and doesn't move, and just the rails pivot on the bolts, hopefully, is what we're hoping for. So we have closed these 2 towers over there, opened this one up, hook this one around where we're going to hold the engine cradle in. And now we just got some pressure to help it not walk over. Now we're gonna lock this one back. And then we're gonna go back to these two and open these back up. And then give it another pull. We do want to tighten up this front chain first though. So actually, let's close this back one. Let's tighten this front one. All right, slacks out of that one. And we can open it, the back one, and then the pressure will equal itself across the two ports. Now let's just pull them both together again. This time we're holding the engine cradle. Alright, so just got done lunch. Gonna get back on this bad boy. Got the heater running for a second. Got a little chilly in here. So what we're gonna do now is take our trusty tape measure. This is just gonna be a rough measurement. Nobody that knows what you're doing, don't get all in a wad. We're gonna basically pull an X measurement, which would be from here to here, okay? If your X measurement from 2 points measure the same, then it's square. You can be able to tell if this is a rhombus. You learn that in, when do we learn that, y'all? Like kindergarten? But you know what I'm talking about. We want a square, not a rhombus. So what we're gonna start out with is something really simple to start with. We'll probably go from like the corner of this, maybe, is what I might do, off of, you know, this, to, you just pick something that's gonna be equal on both sides. Maybe take these caps off right here, yeah, and go to like the center of the strut, and then the same thing from the front of this to maybe the center of the strut over here. And you want to see if them are measuring it. That's just going to show me if the front end up high, if the front end up high is messed up, and then, you know, depending on what I see there, then we'll move down here to the rails. So for the rails, you actually have to have a special tool. So I've actually built one. I'll go over that, how I built mine. It's not perfect, but it works for the level that I do it at. But what you'll want to do is you'll want to measure from the front of your frame horn to, you know, let's say our strut, if we're going to use that again, to the front center of the frame horn to that strut. And then measurements in an X shape should be the same if it's perfectly square. You know, and then just go from there. So yeah, let's get at it. So I just pulled the measurement on it, and what I have is 52 inches, I think this way, 52 inches, and 51 and a half this way. So that tells you that it's still in a rhombus shape and that you need to pull a little more. This is 52 and this is 51 and a half. That means that the point is still too far over this way. And as you can see with the chains, we've been pulling that way. So we've got it close, way closer than we were. I should have measured it from the start and seen where it was at, but we still got about another half an inch to pull out of it. What I want to check now is I'm going to check from these to the frame horns and see what we got. All right, so let's grab this little delicate guy. We don't need all 3 points today. So this is basically a homemade tram. If you don't know what a tram is, it's just a measuring tool. The nice ones can be 300 or more. So all we did is we actually just made our own. Went and got some rod, made a point on the end, welded some square tubing there. Mike built up a bunch of weld, and then we drilled it and tapped it to put bolts in to lock it down. It's not super precise, but it is extremely close, and that's all we need for the level we do of work. We don't use this on like customer insurance job. We just use this on our stuff. So you'll have the play like that, okay? So because I don't have. I mean, you could have built a better quality one and got tighter metal that fits it better, but this is fine for us. So you got a little bit of play. That could be, you know, if it's way out, that could equal probably ½ an inch. But basically how we do it is we just lock it down, and then once you lock it down, you don't touch it. So if you don't touch it, it should stay the same. So I'm gonna just go from the strut towers to the very front of the frame horn, the flange, and then what I'm gonna do for this end is I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this end all the way up so that it's all the way at the end. Okay. And there's no reason for y'all to even comment that this thing is not precise, because I already know it's not precise. I'm not trying to be that precise. Like, literally, I'm not trying to be that precise. Just trying to get in the ballpark for what we do. So what you would do, you sit it on your center like that, and then you line up your other one to your front frame horn. So let's loosen this up, and being it's not super precise, it does take a minute of playing with it to get it perfect. And if you follow the channel, you already have learned that I'm not interested in spending a bunch of money on stuff that I build a lot of stuff to save money. So I'm gonna get that right on that. Man, somebody is texting me, boy. Center of that, center this one up. Make sure that's snug. Snug all these down. And this is just so you can get that point down there. You can use a tape measure when you're, you know, going across the top. But this is just to get low. Okay, so that's center of the frame horn to that. Okay, so that's that right there. And this one, like, I'm actually moving it right now. It don't really have much play in this one. This one's actually tighter than that one. So center of there, the center of that frame horn. This is how the professionals do it. Well, the new systems are laser. A lot of the new stuff, they actually have lasers. Alright, so then what you'll do is, without bumping your rods, don't bump your rods, because that's going to mess your measurement up. And keep this thing stored way up out of the way when you're not using it, so that it doesn't get bent. You're just going to hold it like that. Okay, so that shows me that I'm still pretty decent. ½ an inch. That's about ½ an inch. So it's showing me that the top X that I pull with a tape measure and the bottom frame horns are both registering to be about ½ an inch. So we need to continue pulling this until we can get that ½ an inch out of there. The frame rails down here are not as important to get the ½ an inch, ½ an inch out of. I know everybody's gonna like, oh man, I'm about to probably get tons of hate comments for that. But this section up here is just behind your bumper, nothing bolts to it. What's really important to get is this top X to be straight, because your fenders line up off of it, your hood lines up off of it, you know, your bumper bolts up here. Everything cosmetically ties in up top, nothing cosmetically ties in down there. Your suspension, because I know that comments are going to be like, oh man, that thing's on crab walk, all kinds of stuff. Your suspension is a cradle. It's not like a pickup truck like you're thinking that your granddad taught you about frame damage. So the cradle, as long as your cradle's not bent, the suspension will be fine. You could have a car that's whacked so hard that it crab walks off of the suspension being over with the rails. But if you're talking, you know, if we end up 1/8 of an inch off on the rails, or even 1/4 of an inch off on the rails, that suspension is perfectly fine. This car will drive straight. You're not gonna have no issues, because our buckle was most of it was in front of the bolt, and but they were behind the bolt. The bend was up here, but it pivoted on the bolt, so the actual cradle didn't bend. So the cradle, if you were to exit out the cradle, is still going to be true, because I mean, I can just tell. I know people are going to be like, there's no way to tell without lasers. I can hear all the comments coming already. But the cradle's not bent, no issues. So let's pull another ½ an inch out of this up here. Try to get this squared up. So I just put the X on it, put the tram back on it, and from the strut to the frame rails, I'm like pretty much dead on. But that pretty much X's out to be pretty much dead on the money for the tool I'm using. And then the top actually X's out to be within 1/8 of an inch. And being these flanges are bent a little, that definitely can affect it. So now I'm gonna straighten all the flanges back out, and we're gonna work towards getting parts and putting this all together. I'm probably gonna wrap this video up on this one, basically the breakdown and the frame pull, and edit this one and get it out. And then we'll probably start back on the assembly, getting it together and the paint work. So my partner that started this video with me, you've seen him breaking everything down. That's Seth. That's my newest guy. He actually worked for me years and years ago when I first started out, but then he did his own thing for a while. Anyway, he's back with me, and he's going to help me break it down. But he went home sick. He's not feeling great. But you can see the bottom of our rails now are straight. So we're looking right here at this. This rail is all straight. And then if you go to this side, we are back straight on this side also. This side right here is nice and straight down it. Your crash bar normally unbolts from in here. Yes, there's actually bolts inside here that you can't see, so you can unbolt this crash bar, put another crash bar on it, and that will also, when you bolt the new one on, you should be able to bolt it right on. If your new one doesn't bolt on, then that means your rail spacing is wrong, but you can go back and look in here. Also, I know it's hard to see with the chains, but the top of that rail is back straight when you're eyeballing it, and the top of this rail is hard to see, but if you were here in person, you can see that it's straight. You don't see no buckling up in there or nothing. You can see where it went over and smacked the alternator. That's how close it was. It went all the way over to here and smacked the alternator. It's actually dented in a little on the frame, but all of that pulled right out. So yeah, I'm gonna call that a win. I was stressing this one because it was, like I said, anytime one goes on the clamps, it's bad news. But I was able to walk this one out, so pretty stoked. Feel a lot better about the day. So anyway, appreciate y'all watching.